This kind of thing was not out of character for the Maori. The Maori routinely enslaved and brutalized their enemies, just like so-called indigenous cultures all over the world. I mean, this is what they all did. The moment they acquired muskets from European traders, they fought a series of battles amongst themselves called the Musket Wars, which led to tens of thousands of deaths.
A little while ago that for a man who's deeply mysterious, like Matt Walsh is, right? We're not entirely sure what his background is. He's got it all erased. And I've been hate watching this dude for long enough to know that he's a just profoundly insecure kind of fool. Not someone who is genuine, good faith, is willing to learn or cares at all about other cultures other than promoting things like white supremacy. As Indigenous people march to the Capitol. And a headline by Cool Timothy I highly recommend checking out at Dread Conquest, who is a partially Indigenous content creator, YouTuber, and Twitch streamer. New Zealand government getting a reminder of why they had to sign the Treaty of Waitangi in the first place. I'll show you some of the speech by, again, the legend who's going incredibly viral right now for performing the Haka inside of Parliament. Over 35,000 protesters have gathered outside of New Zealand's Parliament to oppose the controversial bill to reinterpret the Treaty of Waitangi, the 184-year-old founding treaty between the Maori and the Crown.
I may have been suspended for 24 hours and not let in the gates to the debating chambers. But the next day I showed up outside the steps with 100,000 of my people, marching with our heads held high and our flags waving with pride. And we will never, ever have to decide who can mess with our rights and our sovereignty as an Indigenous people here in Aotearoa. We are the kingmakers, we are the sovereign people of this land, and the world is watching us here. Not because of the system, not because of the rules, but because we haka. Whatever we do next, all Indigenous people are relying on us. It's not just about us being Māori, it's about us as Indigenous people liberating ourselves to Hawaii and Hoi. So who's coming with us? I may have been suspended.
Now, I reported previously on this. Right now, the right are actually covering this a bit, obviously as racistly as possible. I've seen End Wokeness, Jack Basevic, and then we're going to watch a little bit of Matt Walsh's latest segment, which again, he just goes deep into ahistorical nonsense and racism, talking about how, like he often speaks about Indigenous folk, that why in the world are we even entertaining any of these people? They're uncivilized, they've been conquered, they were cannibals, they engage in ritualistic, practices and all this other kind of shit. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of them are so terrified is that there was a lot of people who were deeply inspired by seeing the form of resistance that took place deeply within Parliament and not allowing business to continue as usual. They're trying to reframe the whole thing and I believe the tactic is concern trolling to try and pretend that they're concerned about something that they do not care about whatsoever by saying that this bill that has been introduced is effectively going to be used to provide equality for all people, and that it's being fought by the Maori Indigenous folk of New Zealand right now. And that's not true at all. We watched a segment that describes how the bill had been described as a solution to a problem that does not exist in order to once again allow for the infringement upon Indigenous rights. Most likely it is a bill that's not going to pass. It was a bill provided for and put forth by the racist ACT New Zealand party, a right-wing party. It has a lot of other parties because they do have a parliamentary system that are obviously voting against it, including the representation of the Maori people within Parliament.
A lot of people. Estimated 35,000.
Another good account, Tao with Moana, has done a lot of great reporting on this topic. This is the account that I was playing the original video describing what exactly was taking place. But if you're not down for, good information, we also have misinformation in the form of Mr. Matt Walsh, who posted a new video called Beyond Cringe.
Well, it's no secret that as Americans, we mostly focus on domestic politics in our own country. Unlike, say, Canadians, we don't obsess over the daily comings and goings of other nations.
That makes this entire scenario that's happening right now a little bit awkward. Yeah. I will say, while that is just factually incorrect, you could make a much better burn on Canada by saying that Canadians are often fascinated and or preoccupied with American politics. Now, that does have to do with the proximity. A lot of Canadians actually live a lot closer to, say, the northern states than, say, a lot of Americans do in the far southern states, and also are very affected by a lot of American policy. So you'll usually find that Canadians, not just hyper political ones, are very, very kind of aware of a lot of American politics to a fault. I would say you could definitely make a case for the fact that we talk too much about American politics.
It's virtually impossible to find a single American who can name a Canadian Supreme Court justice or a
the better burn there, again, would have been it's kind of hard sometimes to find a single Canadian who can name a single Canadian Supreme Court justice. But I wanted to defy the rules here, and so I've actually got some things prepared for today. I wanted to introduce you all to the Supreme Court of Canada. And this is something else that's going to be darling in this next segment. You'll notice that the Supreme Court judges in Canada, they all dress like Christmas snowmen, or that they're getting ready for winter 24/7. It's actually it looks very cozy, I got to be honest with you. And each picture of the Supreme Court justice will have three different, there's the professional attire, there's the judge's attire, and then there's look at this. It looks like, le Bonhomme Festival, kind of Carnival Festival. It looks very cozy. Anyways, the Right Honorable Richard Wagner, the Honorable Endramac Karatekatsanis, the Honorable Suzanne Cote, the Honorable Malcolm Rowe, the Honorable Sheila L. Martin, the Honorable Nicholas Kassir, the Honorable Mahmoud Jamal, the Honorable Michelle Obasawin, the Honorable Mary T. Moho. And that is the Supreme Court of Canada, everybody.
member of Parliament, for example. I know I certainly can't. By contrast, Canadians can tell you all about Clarence Thomas and Matt Gaetz and so on. This is a well-established phenomenon, and it makes sense because the United States is just, a lot more important than any other country in the world. But
I was like, you could have done that better. I would have just left right into it, But anyways, it's also because America is kind of like the imperial power that imposes their will on the rest of the world, and they actually influence a lot of what happens in Canada. So you gotta stay abreast of it all. Also, I think people around the world kind of know about Matt Gaetz because of the whole, credible evidence of him drugging, raping, and trafficking children stuff. So that's probably why a lot of people know about Matt Gaetz, that whole thing. But I don't know why you want to flex about just not being educated on anything that happens in the rest of the world. But don't worry, he's taken time out of his day to talk to you about the Maori people.
even with that in mind, every once in a while, something happens in the parliament of a foreign country that, it's hard for us to ignore here in America. Maybe a lawmaker in Taiwan steals a bill and runs away with it in order to prevent it from being passed into law. That's something that's actually happened and was hilarious. Or maybe a member of parliament in India pepper sprays his colleagues when they don't vote the right way. Or maybe Italy's parliament descends into a bench-clearing brawl, which requires one politician to leave the chamber in a wheelchair. These are all well-documented incidents that...
I'll give a shout out to John Oliver. He does a really good job of usually covering some international news, not just the funny moments, but also talking about it as if, we as human beings should probably care about human beings globally, not just the things that happen domestically to our own people. But if you're wondering what he's referencing to, I kind of wanted to, make this moment a little bit more epic and put it into the Memes and Production channel to show you what it felt like around the world.
Votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand first.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā pōti e whakahe.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering...
I've wasted my life.
So that's the moment in question that right now
We're in the middle of a vote.
A lot of people,
Mr. Speaker, I
including
hold it a personal vote.
Matt Walsh are a little bit upset about and saying, that it was embarrassing or disgraceful.
May not always have a lot of direct relevance to us, but more often than not, at the very least, they're entertaining to watch. It's a whole genre on YouTube, actually, and it's a lot of fun. The viral moment that just took place in the Parliament of New Zealand, on the other hand, does have some relevance for Americans. It's one of the more important political stories of the year, in fact, even though it's taking place thousands of miles away from our borders. And in case you missed it, several politicians in New Zealand just broke out into a primal Stone Age war dance called the Haka to protest a piece of legislation that's working its way through Parliament. They won't stop doing the chant, and eventually, because of that, Parliament has to be shut down entirely. Watch.
The tribunal as activist. Bit over dramatic after all. The whole point of the tribunal is to make recommendations around potential Crown breaches of Te Tiriti and its principles. Act's bill would dictate how the tribunal might hold the Crown to account and deny Māori what Te Tiriti reaffirmed, tino rangatiratanga. So what is the problem this bill is intended to fix? That's the thing I keep coming back to. Just one of the reasons the bill is highly radical. David Seymour insists his bill provides the basis for a national conversation about the treaty. But it won't, because its starting point is fundamentally flawed. A genuine conversation cannot be had when a minor political party unilaterally rewrites the treaty with a set of principles which distort the original text and meaning. Then the Crown rolls out a process which deliberately excludes its actual treaty partner, tangata whenua. It's not the treaty principles that have led to recent divisions, it's the dishonourable behaviour of the Crown. Nothing about the process or the bill itself is fair, balanced or accurate. Anyone who knows anything about Te Tiriti understands it represents a unique constitutional relationship. It's never been about race. It was an international agreement between Rangatira, representing Papua New Guinea, and Hobson, representing the English Crown. Throughout history, and again in recent decades, thousands of Māori and a growing number of tangata tiriti from all walks of life have taken part in lively, proactive, provocative and imaginative conversations about Te Tiriti, informed by research, a genuine debate around how to make Te Tiriti work in contemporary Aotearoa, imagining different models based on shared values. It's exciting stuff. This exercise the Crown is undertaking is not. As the Tribunal wrote in its second report, the progressing of this bill is having serious impacts on the relationship between the Crown and Māori. But the bill, if enacted, would kill that relationship. New Zealanders have been told that a promise to a minor party in a coalition agreement takes precedence over the founding document of this country. Let's see if those who purport to represent the Crown in this TDT relationship will do the honourable thing, just like Bob Gillies did all his life. Poor Marie.
Which I don't think, you're going to get an honest answer out of Matt Walsh. P.S. To people dropping into the Twitch chat, don't use the Z word from now on, all right? You're going to get timed out, even if you're trying to say or talk about how you yourself have been persecuted for your use of it. Twitch, TOS is not allowing the use of that word. That includes YouTube chat because it all appears on screen. So you're going to get timed out in both chats for using it. And if you need information on that, go to Google instead of typing in chat for answers on that. No, not zombies. Zombies awesome. We love zombies around these parts.
And really scary. It's real intimidating. And they're right, it is dangerous because it may cause everybody in the vicinity to die of secondhand embarrassment. It's hard to watch this video and not have the same reaction that the Speaker of Parliament has. It's painful to sit through. Thankfully, a few people have dubbed the...
I really didn't get those vibes, if anything. Like, why the fuck would you want to be the dude who's just like, not again. Well, I mean, for Matt Walsh, that makes sense. I don't know if you've all seen Foreign Man in Foreign Land's new video on Matt Walsh, in which he does a deep dive into the history of Matt Walsh. And it's actually pretty fascinating to find out that someone who is now a superstar on the right, who has, according to him, a very successful, high-grossing documentary that came out this year about how he's racist, has zero footprint about his own background. You'd think someone like that, who is, again, he seems like an incredibly high degree of narcissist, would want to tell you about, like, hey, I was raised in a small town, very modest parents. We were Christian conservatives. I learned very early on. But there's zero, absolutely no record of who Matt Walsh was prior to him suddenly getting a job out of nowhere that is quite hard to do on a radio station. And that's basically the first time you see a footprint of Matt Walsh even existing. Everything else, it's very, very difficult to track down. And even in the, today's information age, where it only takes you a certain amount of time before you can dox somebody, learn their actual phone number, or learn their address, or find out what exactly was the school they went to, or something like that. He tells you nothing about his personal background. That investigation that Foreign Man in a Foreign Land did also reveals that Matt Walsh's channel has very strange metrics. For example, it gets way more comments per volume of views on his video than you would expect. It seems to be a very insular, basically, safe space comment chamber of the same individuals commenting very frequently in high ratios on a lot of his videos, and then reappearing over and over again in other videos, which is not unusual. Fans will stay and comment on their own videos and that kind of stuff, but it doesn't show you that Matt Walsh, for as much as he likes to brag about how successful his movement and his own, personal brand of hardcore extremist, anti-trans, trans film of the year, Christian fascist rhetoric, doesn't actually have the same reach that he advertises. It seems to be a lot more, either there's a large amount of, bots and farming being done on his videos and that kind of stuff to kind of give the impression that they are much more populated than they actually are, or it's an incredibly insular community that seems very hyper-dedicated to commenting a lot on every single video that Matt Walsh releases every single time. Again, a lot of questions that I'm sure could be answered down the road or in time, but for right now, they're very unusual mysteries, because it's not hard to spend 2 seconds and find out a lot of information about Ben Shapiro. Not that he keeps a lot of it private. You can see the old videos of him being a kid and playing violin very beautifully. He was certainly a very talented musician at a young age, or becoming a lawyer for a very short period of time, or trying as best he could to become a filmmaker, first writing scripts that didn't really get picked up, and then writing novels that were kind of very strangely homoerotic as well as racist, but kind of preoccupied with black men's sexuality and their hypersexuality and bodies and stuff. Either way, there's a lot of information on Ben Shapiro, but not a lot, or if any, on Matt Walsh up to a certain point in time, where all of a sudden he just appeared as a radio shock jock who was also pretty preoccupied with very homosexual acts, such as, tasering his temps in the ass, forcing them to lick the inside of dumpsters as there were used condoms on the floor. Really, again, strange rituals that he seemed pretty preoccupied with. But other than that, it's still a mystery. It won't be for long, I'm sure. I'm sure someone will come along and be like, I knew Matt Walsh. What the fuck? What is he doing all this for? But as of right now, it remains something that is strange and mysterious.
Audio in various ways. There's one remix that turns it into a jazzy little piano number from 1925. It actually works surprisingly well. And because it's a Friday, we might as well play it. Plus, it shows you another angle so that, we can justify playing it that way, I guess.
Justify talking about something more than once.
That people are talking about. The so-called indigenous people had a meltdown in Parliament over a bill. And what you may not have seen is what preceded that moment. David Seymour laid out some rational and calm arguments in favor of his legislation, and then the so-called Maori politicians launched into a volley of personal attacks. Watch.
Pressure had been building all afternoon as the government's treaty principles bill came before the House.
The bill does not extinguish any right, it does not take from anyone, it reinforces the rights of the treaty as universal.
David Seymour says the current approach to treaty principles isn't working.
What all of these principles have in common is that they afford Māori different rights from other New Zealanders.
But the rebuttal came fast and furious.
Shame on you, David Seymour. Ngāti Rehia will be ashamed that one of their sons has come up with a political stunt that looks to divide the nation. How dare you, David Seymour? You should be ashamed of yourself, and you are a liar.
Apologise. apologize immediately. Don't do such things here.
Thanks for that last statement.
No, I can't do that.
Going to have to ask the member to withdraw himself from the House for the rest of the afternoon.
Willie Jackson Sinbin.
See, like watching this, I'm not at all, at any point being like, oh, I guess, yeah, that individual happens to be the rational one, that white dude who sat down, who's like, and then obviously at the backing of the crown immediately, who was like, you need to apologize for your statements. They were not becoming of this dignified, order. So perhaps you could, see yourself out if you're unwilling to apologize right now.
But unapologetic.
Good.
Now, already, this is how you know these people have no argument. They're only capable of shouting shame and resorting to personal attacks to the point that they repeatedly get thrown out of Parliament. Meanwhile, David Seymour is sitting there calmly saying he wants equality. Now, admittedly, I'm not an expert on the finer details of New Zealand politics, so I went looking through some New Zealand outlets to try to get as complete a picture as I could about what's going on here, what the controversy is. Turns out the concept of equal protection under the law is actually extremely controversial in New Zealand. So here's the background. Hundreds of years ago, around the late 13th century, Polynesian settlers arrived by canoe in New Zealand. And they became the Maori people. Depending on who you ask, they were either the first to arrive or they massacred everyone else who was already there when they got there. In any event, before long, the Maori wiped out a different tribe called the Moriori, I think is probably how I pronounce it, who were pacifists living in the Chatham Islands in the east. And they got enslaved and beheaded and cannibalized by the Maori because apparently that's what, civilized cultures do. And to be clear, this kind of thing was not out of character for the Maori. The Maori routinely enslaved and brutalized their enemies, just like so-called indigenous cultures all over the world. I mean, this is what they all did. The moment they acquired muskets from European traders, they fought a series of battles amongst themselves called the Musket Wars, which led to tens of thousands of deaths and even more slavery. These are wars, of course, the Maori now blame the British for. They also bartered with severed heads, which they called toi moko. They would cut people's heads off and tattoo them and then use them for trading. This is kind of what Maori culture was all about. Cutting heads off each other, bartering, cannibalizing, big thing with the Maoris. Eventually, the British came in and provided some stability with something called the Treaty of Waitangi. The idea was that New Zealand would become a British colony, but that the Maori would have their rights protected. They could keep their land and so on to the extent that was possible. And then in 1975, New Zealand recognized this treaty in law for the first time. But there was still a big gray area as to what exactly this treaty required. It established tribunals and led to a lot of rulemaking by judges, but Parliament mostly stayed out of it. Now, with this new bill, David Seymour is trying to change that. He's proposing...
Okay, so you just got a little bit of a history lesson all there from Matt Walsh, who's done a lot of time, I think, in-depth research in order to speak about this. And I said a little while ago that for a man who's deeply mysterious, like Matt Walsh is, right? We're not entirely sure what his background is. He's got it all erased. And I've been hate-watching this dude for long enough to know that he's a just profoundly insecure kind of fool. Not someone who is genuine, good faith, is willing to learn or cares at all about other cultures other than promoting things like white supremacy, which he's quite fascinated and fixated on. It's something that he's really, really concerned with a lot of the time. He's also a fraud. It's also really unusual that a person who talks about how there should be a traditional version of masculinity, men should be men, women should be women, trans people don't exist, boys are boys, girls are girls, all this kind of stuff. Men like to hunt, men like to build, men like to solve problems. Women are irrational, they're emotional, and certainly they do womanly things like laundry. And at the same time, we've watched him. He doesn't know how to barbecue. That's profoundly strange for a man who speaks so much about manly things, and yet he couldn't even grill a burger. He had to get one of his temps to do it for him. He's filthy. I mean, literally. He doesn't know how to wash himself. He doesn't know how to do his own laundry, which for a grown-ass man, profoundly embarrassing. Not what I would call masculine or manly at all. In fact, he actually admitted on camera that his wife has to do all his laundry for him because he doesn't know how to work the machine. So, again, it's really strange to this day why he would want to hide so much of his past while at the same time engaging in so many strange rituals of bizarre BDSM, homoeroticism, and torture and kink, if you will, when he himself reviles all of these activities and likes to talk consistently about while they're satanic or profoundly evil and all that. And I realized, again, I know that he likes to say that people who have no arguments just want to resort to name calling, which I guess is kind of the whole point of his goddamn career. You can see the history of it is all in the background here, that he kind of has like trophies, although I don't know what the banjo thing is. Either way, what is a man if not a man who can play a banjo? But I figured, the whole resorting to name calling without any having any factual information behind you. The dirtbag left, as they're called. Well, maybe that they should just start calling themselves the zero fucks left to give, because at this point, they don't play by the rules. They're not honest. They don't care at all about actually learning about a topic, and just will go on a rant, usually a racist rant, as you just heard before you. He's done the exact same thing when he talks about Indigenous people in Canada, that they were all cannibals. Stephen Crowder likes to say the same thing. They were all brutal savages, cannibals who would eat each other. And did you know that right now we have advanced technology that you can actually take an entire transcript from something that Matt Walsh has said, or Tim Pool has said, or Jordan Peterson has said, or Lauren Southern, or Lauren Chen, or any of the other fucking right-wing ghouls who like to talk for hours and hours and hours about topics they know nothing about. You can take the transcripts, feed them into ChatGPT or another service, a free service provided, and start to use it in order to look at them and fact check everything that they've said. And then you can fact check the fact check afterwards, because again, AI and ChatGPT is notoriously confident, unreliable, and oftentimes will say things without double checking its sources. But after doing that, you can have a really quick Cole's Notes and break down everything that Matt Walsh has said in order to kind of look into it a little bit deeper. And also then please consult with people who are actually either Maori, people who are Indigenous, people who would know a lot more about Indigenous history, people who've studied that in order to do a deeper dive into the things that he's talking about. He goes on this for a while. A lot of the points that he's been talking about have also been repeated by a lot of other white supremacists and wokeness, Jack Pacevic, all these other fucking people who want to say that right now, oh my God, we care deeply about equal rights for everybody for the first time, and as a result of that, we're deeply troubled by these protests and everyone suddenly becoming very inspired or excited by something that is obviously in its own way ironically racist. And no, that's not the case, but I'll give you a quick look into it. And I think, hey, by the way, if you want to develop an app that does this automatically, where all you have to do is do an extension or a plugin, someone should do that. I think it'd be really fun. Just get a plugin that can instantly go to the part of a YouTube video where it says show transcript. When you click on show transcript, it'll have an automatic printout, not 100% perfect. It's basically going the closest approximation to what he said and then get the entire printout. You can copy and paste or download the entire transcript. You can then feed that into fact-checking software. Just regular ChatGPT works as well. In this case, this is the transcript of Matt Walsh, and then you can break it down to start talking about factual inaccuracies. For example, the Maori origins. The claim that the Maori massacred everyone else upon arriving to New Zealand is misleading. While the arrival of Polynesians led to the eventual extinction of some species and transformations of ecosystems, no evidence supports the large-scale massacre of other human populations. The Maori, often misrepresented as a separate earlier group, were actually Polynesians closely related to the Maori. Musket wars. While the musket wars were destructive, attributed them solely to the acquisition of muskets, ignores the broader cultural and historical context, such as resource competition and tribal rivalries. Cannibalism. While there is evidence of ritual cannibalism in Maori history, this was not a defining feature of their culture, but a practice tied to specific contexts of warfare. And honestly, the claims of the brutality sometimes of indigenous, cultures, tribes, bands, while ignoring the absolute sheer torture and brutality of, say, I don't know, the Inquisition, the conquests of Catholic and Christian Europeans, that kind of stuff. It seems often that he'll just be like, yes, and by the way, I am actually a huge fan of the conquistadors, and they are some of my biggest heroes. And it's like, oh, they did some incredible brutality, though. A lot of them were child traffickers and rapists and engaged in a lot of brutality and things that today I'm sure the average person would look back on and be, profoundly upset about. The Treaty of Waitangi. The treaty did not grant stability as it is claimed, but is fraught with misunderstandings and not fully honored by colonial authorities, leading to significant Maori land confiscation and grievances. The Haka misrepresentation, referring to the Haka as a Stone Age war dance, is inaccurate. The Haka is a traditional Maori performance used in various contexts, from celebration to mourning, and its use in protest is the expression of cultural identity. Equal protection under the law. The legislation is being debated does not aim to diminish Maori rights, but seeks to reinterpret the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, which has sparked concerns about undermining Maori autonomy. Maori activists generally seek greater recognition of their rights under the treaty, not full autonomy from the state. Racist statements. Statements like prehistoric grunting and cringeworthy to an immeasurable degree, perpetuate racist stereotypes and mock a cultural expression deeply meaningful to Maori, dismissing Maori cultural practices by framing them as conquered people, undermines their significance, and propagates a colonialist narrative of cultural inferiority. And this, by the way, is stuff that I actually had to go and double check, and then I ran by a couple people who happen to be Indigenous and know a little bit more about Maori history than myself. I'm not Maori. I don't know, an in-depth understanding of their history, so I wanted to make sure that ChatGPT wasn't just running on a free-for-all here. But it is also interesting that you can use things like ChatGPT to run Matt Walsh transcripts through there and say, hey, can you point out the historical inaccuracies and potential racist statements? And in this case, it did an incredibly accurate breakdown of every single piece, which, yes, I have double-checked for its, again, accuracy. Describing Maori as brutal people while ignoring the broader context of historical conflict across cultures portrays them in a uniquely negative light. Also, even the term conquered people, or that implies that there's been either a successful genocide or that there's already treaties in place between Indigenous people and, again, the Crown or colonists. The same thing happens here in Canada, where you often hear people talk about how, well, they lost, get over it, we have to move on, you got NyQuil, you got roads, what's the big deal? The civilization is way better now than it ever was under their tenure or rule or whatever you want to call their brutal, savage cultures. So at this point, we can safely say that, the people who are conquered, you don't sign treaties with them. People who are conquered, you don't have to honor aspects of those treaties years later. The land-back victories that have happened recently in Canada are because, again, colonizers did sign treaties that, dictate which pieces of land should be rightfully under the tenure and ownership of the Indigenous people of this country. So in the same case here in New Zealand, a very similar thing can be said. Claiming the Maori massacred everyone else and the Moriori were wiped out by them, the Moriori were a distinct Polynesian group that lived under the Chatham Islands, not only in mainland New Zealand. They developed a specific Pacific culture due to their resource scarcity and isolation. In 1835, a group of Taranaki Maori enslaved and killed many Moriori. However, this event occurred long after European contact and cannot be generalized to Maori society as a whole. The narrative of Maori as inherent aggressors is a colonial myth used to justify European dominance. The musket wars in the early 19th century were a period of conflict exacerbated by European introduction of muskets, leading to shifts in power dynamics amongst Iwi tribes. However, these wars must be understood as part of a broader historical phenomenon where European trade and colonization destabilized traditional societies globally. One other interesting thing about the fact that once ChatGPT and a lot of collective data harvesting server technology came out, there was a big backlash to it all from the right because they said that it was inherently woke, or it had been programmed to be woke, which is kind of funny when you have a program. They're not conscious, by the way. These are ones and zeros operating, and that it's supposed to collectively determine what is the closest approximation to the question you've asked based on the amount of information that is ingested, and then try to give you its most accurate, what it feels, response, which can be factually inaccurate as well. You have to double check it because it's always going to be telling you with a lot of confidence, this is exactly what it is. And then you'll notice there's time after time that Ed Zitron and other people will point towards it and also be like, but you do know that this is an example right here of it saying that it happens to be 1255, but it's actually like 1257. When you correct it, it gets really angry and stuff like that. So no, it's not a flawless tech. But also, I think one of the big reasons they were so upset with a lot of it when it first came out is the very concept initially of if you have large amounts of data and you have an impartial program that is trying to then repeat or replicate that data to you, then they're going to be really upset by that because they don't like knowledge, information, or even the collective understanding of it. And if you have someone on the other end that isn't conscious, that isn't a human, that isn't actually, programmed in such a way that it's actually going to replicate, the same kind of internalized biases that we all have, and instead tries to give you aggregate information, then of course they're going to start saying that happens to be woke. That this is, in fact, just a woke program designed by woke people. And no, they actually have the opposite problem. There's a lot of inherent biases that coders and programmers have to consistently try and eliminate by not replicating a lot of our inherent racism, sexism biases into the code itself. Yet relativity has a wokeness bias. The treaty bought stability. The 1840 Treaty of Waitangi is a foundational document that promised Maori sovereignty while allowing British governance. However, it has systematically been violated through land confiscations and legal discrimination, leading to the New Zealand Wars of 1845 and 1872 as ongoing Maori grievances. Haka is a Stone Age war dance. The Haka is a traditional Maori performance art with diverse purposes, from welcoming guests, there's one Haka for that, to commemorating ancestors or expressing protest. Its performance in modern context represents cultural resilience and identity, not primitiveness. The claim that Maori is seeking autonomy from New Zealand, the Maori seek to uphold treaty obligations that recognize their distinct status and rights, which are aligned with the modern framework for Indigenous self-determination under international law, also known under the UN as UNDRIP, for example, like the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. UNDRIP. Yeah. Then you can even ask it, why is what he said racist? It gives you a breakdown of that, which again, I think is profoundly funny. Why I think it'd be really funny just to have like an extension that does this. You just have to click one button, and then instead of having to sit through, you know, the amount of work it takes to make like bread tube videos. I have made fucking so many of them where I sit down there and I go piece by piece through every statement that a fucking racist ass ghoul like Matt Walsh says, and then you have to research it and then realize where he lied. This is what Knowledge Fight does every single one of their episodes. I don't know if you listen to a Knowledge Fight episode, but they break down every single statement that Alex Jones makes. Why this one might be factually incorrect, why this one might be an exaggeration, why this one is just an example of him reading a headline without reading an article, why this one is 100% made up, why this one is based on something that factually occurred, but then he's inventing a completely new conspiracy theory that is completely derived from this while not being based in reality. Why this, right? You know, et cetera, example. And then right now, we live in a day and age where we're basically going to be burning alive to have computers that can, you know, steal people's art and show us, you know, birds with giant balls and stuff like that, which I think the AI art stuff is at this point just annoying. Every time I see AI art, it looks like slop and it bugs me. But using aggregate knowledge accumulators is actually really funny to use against the right, because you could just instantly get results to be like, oh, okay. And then use them as jumping off points, by the way. Use all these as points where you can start being like, all right, well, now I get to look a little bit more into that. Now I can do some research. Like, it's the difference, I think, between kids today are probably going to be using this kind of tech to create essays and to cheat and all that kind of stuff. Use it the same way that my generation used Wikipedia, all right? If you copy and paste Wikipedia, you're not learning anything. If you just be blah blah, and then you're like, okay, I've done my research, the essay's over. You should use Wikipedia as your jumping off point, and then find the link that it's used. You can actually ask ChatGPT or other kind of, you know, information aggregators to tell you at the same time, hey, what is this based off of? Do you have your link? And then they will have to cite their sources before your very eyes, and then you can look into those more in depth. This could be a powerful way to start utilizing this tech that has been forced upon us that you really have no choice. You can't use now, like most browsers, WhatsApp. Like, what the fuck? Is Angry Birds going to have AI integration? Why does everything need AI integration? I don't need AI integration in WhatsApp. I just want to message a friend and have them message me back. I don't need a pop-up that's like, would you like to use AI to enhance your conversation? No, I can type. I can talk. I can have a conversation with another human because that's what I want with this experience. I don't want to know your opinions on which are the tastiest jelly beans in the 18th century right now. I would like to just talk about why this one jelly bean was delicious. You know, something like that. Portrayer of Maori brutality, why it's racist, highlighting Maori practices like cannibalism without context dehumanizes them, ignoring that all societies, including European ones, have histories of violence and exploitation. Framing Maori as a conquered people, emphasizing Maori military defeats perpetuates a Eurocentric narrative of cultural superiority. Indigenous resilience and adaptability, especially in preserving identity amidst colonization, are ignored. Grievance mongers label, why it's racist, dismissing legitimate calls for treaty justice as grievance mongering delegitimizes Maori voices and erases the impacts of historical and systemic injustices. Cultural erasure through satire, statements like mocking the pronunciation of Maori terms, like Tena Longa Ting Tong, trivialize the Maori language and perpetuate linguistic imperialism. Indigenous languages hold cultural and spiritual significance, and their mockery reinforces colonial attitudes. Not bad, ChatGPT. Upon closer inspection, the dates of these moments in time, the history, the wars, and the names checked out. I have cross-examined the computer's work, and it turned out to be valid. Unlike this racist asshole. So, I don't know, coders, if you have an afternoon, fun thing to do. Every single YouTube video has an automated transcript that is generated through it. You can go through it. And you can also do this to double check your own work, but then double check the check. Make sure you do that because, again, it's not in any way, shape, or form flawless. You have an information approximator. That's what ChatGPT is. You give it a command, ones and zeros start to fire, and then it's going to try to approximate by aggregating it's the totality of the information that it's trolled, not trolling, but trolled, like trawled the ocean of the sea for information.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Puppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincell, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.